So we are doing a makeup list review today for American Horror Story episode 4, which is not called Holes. A lot of you guys told me it was going to be called Holes, and I don't know if you meant this one or the next one. I'm not sure. I think this one's called 11/9, which is the day it was announced that, you know, Trump won. So this episode, okay, first of all, let me just state, like, a blanket statement that this season is definitely getting better and better as we continue. The first, I mean, it's kind of normal, though, I think, with a TV show and a premiere, that the first or second episode usually aren't as strong as the sum of its parts, you know? Originally, I was going to state that the horror elements have been kind of lacking, which is partially true, but it's not 100% true, because we do have horror elements that are not about politics or people's fears. They are horror elements. We get some gore in this episode. A lot of gore, actually, for being a show. It's pretty good. We follow more of Chaz Bono's character in this episode, Gary, which I think is interesting. I really like his character, and I liked learning about how he lost his arm, which was very shocking, which I'll get into that kind of story in a second. We have less of Ivy and Allie's characters in this episode, except we do get a little bit of them. It's more so following Kai in this episode, and I liked it, honestly. I liked following Kai. I mean, Evan Peters is just amazing in every single role that he plays, so this is definitely, like, amazing. It shows his range, honestly. We do see Ivy get a little wishy-washy towards the end of the episode, which was interesting, because so far, Allie has been painted as the worst one between the two, if you're gonna compare. But Ivy gets her time. I mean, Ivy, for me, hasn't been great anyway, because she, I think, is being a horrible wife and unsupportive of her wife. But we see that she has some darkness in her. So in this episode, like I said, we mostly follow Kai, and he scoops up a couple more people to join his cult, if you will, and it is confirmed. Oh, this is, by the way, a lot of spoilers in this episode, or in this review, if you haven't seen it yet. I talk about a lot of things that happen throughout the episode that will spoil it if you haven't seen it yet. That being said, we see Kai take a couple extra people into his cult, and it is confirmed that he is behind the clowns, which, I mean, that was kind of a little bit obvious, I think, to most of us, but it was confirmed in this episode that it was indeed him. And it looks like Meadow and Harrison are the two other people, the two other clowns. So it's Kai dressed up as a clown, and then I think they were implying that it was also Meadow and Harrison. In this episode, towards the end, it's revealed that he's behind the clowns. I think they are in it, obviously, but I think they're the other two clowns. So with him, you know, getting the people to join his cult, if you look at each one individually, if you know anything about cults, I did a whole video on psychology concepts that will blow your mind / change your life, whatever you want to call it. I will link it up here. I mentioned in that video that actually any one of us would probably join a cult at some point in our lives, because it's not about people being dumb or, you know, desperate. I mean, maybe a little bit desperate. But there's not one type of person that joins cults. They all pretty much have one thing in common, which is they are in a vulnerable state, and that is why they join cults, because they're vulnerable, they're easily manipulated. And that is true if you look at the three people that Evan Peters / Kai really took into his, you know, cult. We have Beverly, which is the news reporter. We have Harrison, which is the neighbor of Allie and Ivy, who's married to Meadow. And then we have Gary, who is a Trump supporter already, who is in a vulnerable state. Obviously, he's being tied up because he sexually harassed Ivy at a Trump rally, and Winter stood up for her. They were gonna release him after the election, but at the end, well, in the beginning, we see that he votes. So we know that he escapes, and at the end, we figure out how and why he only has one arm. So as he's tied up, Kai comes down the stairs, talking his big speech, you know, giving it all to him, being very convincing, and I mean, Kai is really smart if you think about it, taking advantage of the climate, of the political climate, and how both sides are really kind of desperate and vulnerable. He basically convinces Gary to cut his own arm off because he's handcuffed to the wall, cuts his own arm off so he can go vote. He basically gives a speech of passion and like, don't you want to be a part of that world, and you know, that whole thing. Emma Roberts had a cameo in this episode, and I say cameo because she was killed in this episode, the same one where she's kind of introduced, so that I think is odd. She might come back because she is you know, a person from American Horror Story. She, you know, so I don't know. She's very good at those roles though that she plays, let me just say. One thing that I think we're lacking even more than horror is tying it into past seasons. Now obviously we have Twisty the Clown being a part of it, at least in the first few episodes. That kind of fell off and that went away. They haven't really, unless I'm wrong and I like missed something, they haven't really tied into other characters of the show. Maybe Chaz Bono is the same actor person from Roanoke, but other than that I don't see a connection between a lot of the characters and past seasons, which we all know that American Horror Story does that every single season. They're all intertwined in some way, or at least 2 or more of the seasons are intertwined in some way. So I'm waiting for them to reveal more about how it's tied into other seasons, and I think that is missing more than the horror. I still think horror is a little lacking in my opinion, because personally politics and people generally aren't scary. They're not horror elements in my opinion, so they could add some extra stuff. I think there's a lot of stuff they could do with this season without having to do with politics that can be scary, you know? Although I think Kai in it himself is a horror element if you think about it, because he's highly manipulative and very convincing. He can convince literally anyone as long as they're a little bit vulnerable. He will convince them to either kill, hurt themselves, or go along with murder. So I think Kai is my favorite character in this season, definitely. He's just so like broad and diverse, and I think he has so many layers to him, and I'm glad we're finally seeing more of his character and how he's kind of being the one to connect all of the characters. Let me know your thoughts on this episode down below, and any theories that you have for the future episodes also down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.